throw them in the hole. That's the deep black hole. And just to show a few examples, you can go to newraphael.com and see everything. I like this idea that if you use the web as a medium, then you have a solo show all year round, all around the world. This is another work, slowempty.com. And every time you click, the composition rearranges. It's a bit funny doing talks where I kind of feel like you shouldn't talk about art, you should just see it. It's a bit like sex. You kind of ruin it by talking about it. I haven't been at that stage in relationships where you have to talk about sex and try things. We should. This is roomwarp.com. And then I'll show one more. So this is just so you kind of get an idea of what I'm up to. This is jellotime.com. It's an interactive depiction of a Jello dessert. I'll tell you a little bit about it. There's different aspects. So, when you think about Jello, what's the best way of depicting it? Is it a painting? Would it be a neon sign? Would it be a performance where someone wobbles like a... There's many ways you could depict a Jello. And I wanted to make a Jello for the internet. So I'm very interested in how your relationship with seeing Jello in real life and seeing it on a screen, and being honest about that it's on a computer. It's not a photograph, it's a computer-generated image. And then it's also a bit of a symbol of maybe where our bodies are headed if we're on the screen too much. Okay, I'll leave it at that, and then Sean, you show a bit of your work.
All right, it's tag team work presentation here. I've got mine on a different computer, so I'm just gonna like hit screen. And here we go. This is a work that I actually have downstairs, showing, I think at the moment. It's a video that I made in 2000. A lot of my work, I perform in it. The only reason I do that is because I can't convince my friends to perform some of these things that I do. But it wasn't meant to be a self-portrait at all. It's just to do with this idea of looking at something that we all look at. This is kind of maybe a good example of my concerns as an artist. Something like skateboarding, we all see it. We're saturated by these images of skateboarding in pop culture, but I wanted to make a skateboarding video that maybe looked more like a dance piece, that looked like it was even maybe graceful, choreographed dance. So something that we have a preconception of, that skateboarding, usually through this MTV model of looking at extreme sports like skateboarding, it's usually very fast, furiously cut, really loud, blaring soundtrack. And so this video is kind of the first of many projects where I was just looking at skateboarding maybe in terms of art, you know, like looking at romantic landscape painting, the tradition of the romantic sublime, where we have to look at how nature plays a part in our lives. And so actually in this work, it was a terrible day for skateboarding. It's the worst. You don't want to skateboard in the wet near waves. It's a stupid idea. And also if I make a mistake, I'm going to be surfing on my skateboard. And actually you can see some surfers out in the back there. So I'm not actually alone. It would have been great if I was a bit more dramatic, but I couldn't get the surfers out. They are just there. As you know, this is South Bondi, so a lot of the locals here will know where it is. I'm going to make it really quick because I've tortured Sydney with these works for a long time. This is called Tangara. So a lot of the works are performance-based, and they're just recorded very simply on video. And all of my, I like what Raphael was saying, where he's very honest about the images as images generated by computers being on the internet. We should talk about that later. And in this work, it's also the case, I don't want to make any special effects. I just want to do something very simple like invert the camera so that the sense of gravity is distorted or something. But that people can work out what has happened. The manipulation is really easy to work out. It's slow motion and the camera's upside down, but maybe the train looks a bit more like a spaceship. This is a friend of mine, Danny Ramirez, this great Spanish breakdancer. Again, all I've done is just invert the camera and slow him down, but I give the work a very heavy title. I call it Pataphysical Man because I want it to be like the Trivian Man or Le Corbusier's Modular Man or something. So I make all these references to art history, but I keep it very casual. This is a work that's going to take too long to look at, but it's looking at roadkill kangaroo on the sides of highways in Central Australia. And lastly, this is a BMX work. So I'm kind of working with a lot of athletes and performers, and the work is, always getting put into museums. Well, not always, but often they're shown in museum, in gallery environments. But I'm more interested in how the extreme sports communities accept these works or analyze these works. So the work has got an audience that's outside of the museum, because I spend quite a lot of time with people who ride BMX bikes and skateboard and do free running and whatever. So maybe I'll leave it at that. I've got maybe there's a couple of performance photos of me jumping off Mike Parr's sculpture at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. It's a really great ramp. So art is something that you can kind of use. This is an inverted. Again, I was just mucking around on these ones. These are just, and then there's me eyeballing a kangaroo doing. But planking, that thing that everyone was doing, I really got into planking. I don't know about you guys, but that's like really, it needed the internet planking as a way of transmitting your own planking disaster or whatever. So anyway, that's it. So we can talk about our work now. So, and we also have like a list of suggested conversation topics from the Vivid organisers, which was really nice. So,
do we have to do it in rhyme?
Yeah, we have to rhyme. We actually have to rap this.
Battle?
Yeah, we're going to freestyle battle. But actually, it is a freestyle conversation because we met this morning for breakfast, and it was very quick, but we didn't want to go over any material that we would talk about now, so we're really going to add
Can I start with a question to you?
Of course.
I'm interested in Australia being, there's a similar feeling to sort of a hot desert place occupied by Europeans. And then it's interesting that you have the Californians that you referenced. You have the very glamorous skateboarding, which is also very marketing driven. California is really good at blossoming subcultures, making a huge business out of it. And then I'm very curious how that feels. You're sort of in a similar climate, in a similar situation of Europeans on a desert planet, but then you see that from afar. So I'm interested in that story.
Yeah, it's a complex kind of set of relationships. And I guess I don't think I have an answer for that, but I try and work it out through art.
Yeah.
And one thing
did you feel a relationship with California specifically?
Yeah, maybe because some of the things that I'm involved in, and many of the things that I work on as an artist, I was doing as a kid. So I don't make that distinction between trying to grow up and stop doing that. Actually, my subject matter.
There's no line where you stop being a kid.
No, that's right. Yeah, which is great because I see the playfulness in your work as well, which I think is really important to talk about. But with the Californian versus the kind of Australian interior break, I feel like a lot of the things that I was working on had somehow developed in California or on the west coast of the US. So I had to start to recognize that as being an interesting place for me.
Yeah.
But everywhere in the world had their own skateboarding scene, and they have a really great scene to to this day.
I didn't skateboard as a kid, but all my friends did, and I was photographing them, and I was always frustrated, but you took advantage of it. I was frustrated that we didn't have the beautiful Californian light.
Yeah.
So you'd photograph things and they would look really dull, but here you have that sort of California light.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, I didn't want that light. I wanted to do something differently. I really wanted the kind of European aesthetic.
So then you had to travel to shoot things to look un-Californian.
Yeah, now I have to make stuff in the UK,
but when you would do skateboard videos here, they would look Californian.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, but it's interesting because it was never a problem for me, the Californian look in Australia. I would think our light is much more harsh than the Californian light. So we beat them with having less ozone. We have to wear 40 or 50 SFP sunblock, where they can probably get away with 30. So actually, I would like to think that Australians are tougher than Californians in terms of dealing with that.
Well, anyone in the world is tougher than California.
Yeah, actually, Australian surfers have a really nice saying because culturally we're kind of similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In terms of beach culture, and the surfers here and on the west coast, they say that they're surfing the same way, but just breaks in different directions. I like that because we have this.
Your toilet also flushes the other way.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. But it's quite nice to share the Pacific, you know.
Yeah.
Even though technically what you see out on Bondi is the Tasman Sea, it's still part of the Pacific. So and I think that art is a great thing to try and work out all of those relationships that you have to global culture.
Yeah.
Because when we're growing up talking about influences, not only from our hometown, but we've already started to devour stuff from the other side of the world. So how did you, I've got a question back to you about that. Like, so one of the suggested subject matters that we talk about, which I thought was cool, was when you come from a particular place, how does that influence your work? And do you recognize that on a conscious level in reference, or is it subconscious?
Well, it's more subconscious when you begin, because as a teenager, I was always looking up to American culture, and the cool music and cool movies was from there. And then you go there and you understand that actually where you came from is also very interesting. But you grow more appreciative of where you come from later.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you realize that a lot of decisions you make are because you grew up with. It's funny to me that the icons of art are known all over the world, but there's a lot of interesting stuff beyond that, and those are usually known more regional. So I know a lot of Dutch artists that you might not know, because I'm from there, and you would know a lot of Australian artists, and I would only know a few.
Yeah.
So you have a more deeper understanding of where you come from.
Yeah.
That's a pretty obvious statement, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that it's interesting when I look at your work. Like, obviously, I'm thinking, okay, Raphael is a Brazilian Dutch artist living in New York, which in itself is a very exotic combination.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, I'm a homegrown Aussie kid, born and bred in Sydney. But I am living in London at the moment, which is confusing and great at the same time. But I look at your work and I think, okay, I do see this kind of interest in, say, colour field, abstraction, abstraction. So there's the Dutch connection.
I will say this, that I always had the feeling that I wanted the work to be universal, and it's a goal. I'm not sure if I'm attaining that, but I was always interested in Mondrian trying to find a universal language, and kind of succeeding because it's kind of not very local. And then I feel like Walt Disney was even much more successful at finding a universal language.
Yeah.
He really redefined cute. And
and
I kind of feel like I'm in the area in between. So moving images and reduced. But I'm really interested in the internet being non-local. So that's why I was trying to find a visual language where you're not sure where it's from. And so you're trying that, but then later on you're like, oh, those decisions were very Dutch.
Yeah, it's like a dilemma. You can't really transcend where you're from in a way. Or maybe as an artist, it's nice to be honest about where those influences come from, rather than trying to force a particular look or a style that cuts against all of your history or all of your upbringing.
Well, I'm amazed that we still have nations.
Yeah.
It's funny when you think about it.
It would be a lot easier without passport control, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But when you think of, like, say, like this idea of Mondrian is kind of cool versus Walt Disney, that's a great battle. Walt Disney versus, but I was thinking like one of the really famous Monjam paintings that I like is New York Boogie Woogie, because of course it has this reference to the city grid. And I was thinking that more people in the world alive today will know about Mickey Mouse than New York Boogie Woogie.
Yeah.
But both are so important, and it's nice to see that you're in between those references, that you can reference pop art, but you can reference hard edge abstract art, and keep it fun.
I wouldn't even call Mickey pop art, but pop culture. Yeah.
Pop culture, yeah. Well, I guess Warhol would then take something like Mickey and then collapse it into the pop phase of art or whatever. So but it's interesting because I work with pop culture unashamedly as well, and I think that it's amazing to think that artists today, we don't even have to think about it. Like after Warhol just basically opens the doors. Like
I don't want to be the smart ass, but to me, Dalí opened all these doors, and Warhol's credit, but Dalí painted movie stars and Coca-Cola bottles and cars and. Anyway, but
that's true.
Something I wanted to ask you: we're becoming more sedentary. The average screen time per person in the US is 11 hours, I think. Do you spend a lot of time outside of the screen?
Yeah, I think I have to because I still want to perform in some of my works, and I'm getting a bit older, so it requires some level of fitness, I guess.
But does it require for you to, I imagine for you to come up with these very physical works that it would require for you to have 5 hours a day where you're just going around the street without too much distraction?
No, it's more random than that, and it's getting less and less. And screen time, I think it becomes an issue for all of us. Like, how much time are we in front of a screen? And for me, it's not so much because I'm working in a pretty traditional way. You know, like I can record a video of someone performing, or someone records something of me. I take it, I edit it, and then I present it or package it or whatever. It's not a major hassle. It's not like a performance where I'm trying to produce so much work that I'm denying myself of the work because I'm always on the screen. The screen time has a relationship to all of the other stages of the work. But I think it's pretty amazing that we all start to have to manage screen time, because I don't spend that much time on the internet unless it's research. But I love your work because I love this shift that you're talking about, where so many artists, even myself, would present work on the internet, but the internet isn't our medium.
Yeah.
And I think that.
But you make videos that kind of fits the internet.
Yeah, but I could still be operating in the 80s where I would shoot a video and stick it on a monitor in a gallery.
Yeah.
It's just fun for me to know that you can transmit it on the internet as well.
Yeah.
Where I think that you've kind of gone one step further where the internet is the medium, which I think is and there's only a few artists I know who do that successfully. Like say Paul Miller, DJ Spooky is one of them. I think maybe there's a couple of them, I'm just going blank, which is like really embarrassing. Who's that New York guy who did Colors? Got a Corey Archangel.
Yeah.
These guys, I think there's a generation of artists now who can use the internet as the medium, and it doesn't have to even operate anywhere else but the medium. The internet has its primary site.
Yeah,
which
it's
I think
called
is
removing
great.
friction.
It's great.
The internet marketing terms make it easier for people.
Oh,
You don't have to
removing
go to
friction.
the museum.
It should be like a life philosophy.
Yeah.
Fiction.
Yeah, sometimes I go to digital conferences and speaking, you learn these buzzwords, and one of them is LOSOMO, local social mobile.
Yeah.
So,
Losomo.
yeah, so you just have to,
Yeah,
if you
cool.
want to start in the consulting game, you learn a few of these words, and you have to be very confident, and then just go, you guys need to be more LOSOMO, and then you send it.
And then you invoice
Send an
them.
invoice, yeah.
Invoice them. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that with a few people and see how they go. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think even the idea of the language changing around technology. I mean, I'm more of a kind of flaneur who just goes and checks out what I like, and I use it as research for my own work, but I'm still not using it.
So how do you use it for research?
Just, I think maybe if I'm interested in artists, I look at it and I save
Okay,
work.
but let's say I'm interested in really the development of a piece like the ones you've shown. So if you decide, I want to do something with dance or either cycling or maybe with the ninja or who knows what.
I haven't done the ninja, but I'm
Yeah.
going to take that on board.
Yeah, go extreme. But what's the process from idea to final work?
Yeah, it's a mysterious one because it's not really even the same from work to work. Sometimes I'll go and see a live performance and I'll see a performer and I think, wow, I really need to work with them, they're incredible. At other times I have this idea of seeing or hearing about someone through some channel that they're incredible at doing something, and then I have to hit the internet and see if they've got a clip or whatever. So
Can you tell me about a project where you hit a dead end? That's interesting to me. Where you had an idea and you were almost there and you decided to not do it.
yeah, okay, and I'm going to have to ask you the same question.
Yeah.
This is a good one. Yeah, maybe at one stage I was interested in asking an athlete to work with very famous artworks, and they were maybe hesitant to do that because they didn't really understand the project. And I was thinking, because one of my things is like I love to throw function out the window. I like it when an artwork wasn't designed to function anyway, some of the works, but I love it when people find new function or parafunction, project function. They weren't really into it, and I kind of, that for me is a dead end because I don't want to force them to do it. If they're not involved in the ideas, then they shouldn't be paid to just do this thing, because that's a problem for me. Everyone involved has to kind of be a part of the project and know about the work and the concerns. So that was a tough one. But what about yourself? Have you experienced this kind of problem?
I just have a long list of things I want to do, and then some of them, and one of them was, it's a pretty simple idea, but it turned out to be too difficult to make. And it's this idea of a cloud of smoke that's expanding, and at the same time the camera is moving back. I wanted this idea of a threat that's always coming towards you. So I worked with some 3D guys, and it turns out that any particle simulation of any really physical simulation just takes forever to render. And we made a few tests, and then you have this visual contradiction of when an object is growing, but the camera's zooming out at the same time, it kind of looks like it's standing still.
Okay.
And then it's like, oh, should we add a floor? So you have a feeling you can see the movement. But I didn't really want that. I wanted it to be all one object. So I kind of hit a dead end there. I've worked with one 3D guy, he got frustrated, and then another. And then I just put it in the shelf, and then maybe it'll come up later.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think maybe I'd be interested to know if that project would be easier to do when, say, there's like a random organic smoke algorithm as a part of some software tool.
Well, there are those, they just take a long time to render. But the other thing is that when I talk about things being honest about being on a computer, the simpler you go, the easier it is for a computer to do things. So when you hit these points where it's like, man, this is so hard to do, then maybe I should simplify things so it will become better.
Okay, the idea maybe is getting involved in something else rather than the cloud.
I call this abstraction for the sake of reproduction. So because you want to make it, this economy of the computer, the processor, and the software you're using, make it a bit simpler so it's easier. So you have to abstract more to make it easier for the computer. Just like early video games.
That's interesting. I like this idea that the idea has to suit the capabilities of the technology. But on one level, you could probably go to Hollywood and Industrial Light and Magic, or one of the big houses and get that done. But I like the idea that you want to keep it somehow accessible to yourself. The process doesn't get lost in this. And for me, because I work with actual sort of performers in space, I think of like an artist like Cyprien Gaillard. I don't know if anyone knows that guy, the French guy who's living in Berlin. And he would say, okay, what you do is you steal a fire extinguisher, and you go into a train tunnel and you just let it off in some train tunnel, and then you just run out of it with a camera. And that's actually quite simple. But what you're talking about is like kind of complex because
I think the stuff he does is not that simple.
No, it's
35 millimeter, and it's
and actually the one where he runs around Spiral Jetty with another fire extinguisher work. But I like the idea that he's got this really simple way, and it's not even that simple, it's deceptively simple, but the same process, or not even the same aesthetic, but because you're having to go through a digital process, becomes really complex.
Yeah.
You know, you can't
Well,
just get
yeah.
that far.
Even my process is not that simple because I work with a programmer.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to meet him, and that he wanted to. Especially in the beginning, I couldn't pay much, but I couldn't do it on my own. So it's not that simple. Yeah.
This is a good segue into art as a commodity. If you couldn't pay your programmer in the early stages of your URL development as an artwork, but now you said one thing I did hear, remember you saying this morning, was that you're coming up to your 100th URL, which is nice, as a saleable artwork.
So each work that I showed, if it had the internet been working, you would have also seen the domain name. And the domain name is the title of the work, and it's also the location of the work. So it's easy to remember. You go to jellotime.com and you see the Jello, etc. And so I've been making these, and now I'm almost at 100. And the domain name was interesting to me because it finishes the project. Otherwise, it just feels like, oh, I made something on my computer, I'm not sure if it's done.
Okay. So the title is, the URL is almost like the title of the work. You know, if an artist makes a work and then they don't title it, it's like they haven't finished it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And it's kind of like putting a frame around it.
Yeah.
And then I realized, well, there's not much scarcity on the internet because you can copy bits infinitely.
Yeah.
So any image you see on the internet, you can just copy, but domain names are actually scarce.
Yeah, they're locked in. Yeah. And so you obviously buy the domain name.
Yeah.
And then that comes after you've made the website?
Usually, I've also, sometimes I buy domain names in advance, and then I end up not really using them, and they don't fit the pieces.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but I would say 95% of the time the domain names come.
Oh, that's interesting. So I remember this quote by Marcel Duchamp about titles. He said that the title of a work is the unseen color. You know, he was talking about painting. The title of a painting is the unseen color of the painting. You know? And so it's so important. For him, it was really important because it was kind of like some conceptual clue to the the work, whatever it was, a ready-made or object. But I think it's nice that for you it's really important as well because you don't even feel like the work is complete, or it can't be commodified even if it doesn't have the...
No, but that's not even the issue, but it really feels, because the internet is so full of little tests and blog posts and things that are not fixed anywhere, and you forget where they were, so... Yeah.
Actually, I'm
interested in... Do you own any domain names?
No, I don't even have my own website.
No,
it's actually really embarrassing talking to you, man, because I'm like, actually, I'm
an internet
hot mess, man.
Like you're just not so addicted as anyone, as most other people.
No, I don't think I'm addicted to it. I think I get addicted to, like, say, certain sites of artists or like I like reading some certain philosophers, but I'm not on blogs or whatever. So, or art theorists or whoever. So I think I go for runs on it. Like it's like eating too much ice cream and then I have to leave it for a while.
But you don't feel an urgency to put your thoughts. I see the internet as the universal library.
Yeah.
And you don't feel like you want to put your thoughts in there, put essays or...
Not at this stage, but I'm just actually involved in a writing project, and that'll go online. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking of like scanning an old art thesis, and then I thought no, because I read it again. I thought, wow, that's actually quite bad. I don't want to put it online. But I like the idea that it could have been photocopied and just slammed off like it came from like some ancient Xerox machine. So I even thought about the aesthetic, but then I kind of balked at the fact of people actually reading that old material. Mm-hmm. Not that anyone would even read it, but it's kind of like a disclosure editor.
Okay.
And I'll get over it soon, but
you don't feel a moral obligation to share your work with broader audience?
You know, actually, one thing that I'm interested in is when you set a situation up that inspires other people to put your work on the internet. That's really interesting for me. So, like, say, when I hear about the history of people studying artwork, and they used to take like whatever, an easel or a drawing board into a museum and they would copy like a painting or whatever. I think today's version of that is people going into a museum and if they see a moving image work or whatever, they'll just take some video of it. And then sometimes that video makes it onto the web. And you see a YouTube clip of your work and I'm always thrilled. Like, I think some artists might think, that's a bad representation of my work. But for me, someone was bothered to get their phone out and record it for whatever reason, and then upload it, which is incredible. That must have taken at least 5 seconds of your time. And you know, we're all time poor these days, so that's great. So I think also I was interested in, say, photo opportunities as a concept. Like the whole idea of a photo opportunity is bizarre. What is that anyway? Like artists never really made work knowing that it's a photo opportunity. That we're both interested in someone like, say, Jeff Koons, and I'm sure he is very aware that people, even if they have got no relationship to his work, or they might not even be interested in contemporary art, if they saw like Puppy or one of his balloon dogs or whatever, they'd like to go up and stand next to it and take a selfie or whatever, and chill with their crew in front of some balloon dog.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly understandable thing. It's a pretty spectacular object. And so,
well, the Instagram is an extension of your thoughts and your communication. It's an extra communication protocol.
yeah.
Like
So I like this.
thinking it and you put it out.
Yeah, and I like maybe the idea that some artists make work, that the work doesn't stop there. It's kind of continued to be reproduced and represented by these other people who are on, say, Instagram, or you know, sticking images up, and it's kind of like this reverberation of the work, which I love about the net. And so I did one project where I was involved in doing replica cars of famous, like this Mad Max car. And people would I would see it on the net, you know, for years later, people were still taking photos of themselves next to this car. And so that's kind of how I was existing on the internet as a kind of a lurker, not active.
So you have no, there's no feeling, it's hard for me to understand when I meet other artists and I understand it and I don't understand it. But I meet other artists who don't tweet, don't Instagram, don't Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
And for me, if I didn't post something for a few hours online, I feel weird. Like
You're already gone.
Yeah, but it's part of it is just like, oh, look at me, whatever. But the other part of me is this moral obligation that art has to be shared and seen by as many people as possible.
Yeah. I think for me, I am involved in that. It's just that I use other people's accounts. It's like I'm a lurker.
Okay.
And I'm happy with that for now. Facebook, I think, is less interesting for me than Instagram. I actually have an Instagram account, but I only put one image every few months on it. So it's very limited, and no one really cares about it. So, but I think I have to be real about this stuff. It's just not that interesting. Like when I print stuff, it's more interesting. I'm more interested in when people think that it's interesting enough for them to put it on.
Yeah,
that's kind of, you know, this. But I think what I wanted to talk to you about was this idea of marketing things that would normally be seen as free or open source or accessible, and I like this idea because you're kind of almost like pushed into this new field of not only buying a domain name and licensing that, but then selling that on connected to your imagery and animation as the work itself, which is pretty wild.
Well, it's this moral obligation that I feel. It's a frustration that I always felt that you would see magazines of art with stills of videos. You know, like, I can't experience the work. It's showing in Canada or it's showing in Zimbabwe or whatever, and I'm not there. But it's a video; it can easily transfer electronically. So why can't I see the work? And that was the basic feeling. To me, it's like paintings are unique. They're unique works. You can make a picture of it, but you have to experience them in real life to really experience them. Like, I understand. Music has been recorded, and the Rolling Stones didn't print 3 editions of their records, and then sold it one to a museum, one to a rich person, and one to another institution, and you would have to go to that institution to listen to Satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's weird, because it can be copied, so it should be copied.
Yeah.
Many copies should exist.
Yeah.
And so any wave-based art piece, you can have atom-based or energy-based. If it's transferable through the network, then it should live on the network. And then that's the sentiment I had. But then you do want to create an economy, and then I thought, let's make an economy where they can buy the work, but it has to remain public.
Yeah.
So it's this basic sentiment that I think sharing is good, and then the collector takes part of that, and the collector actually, the more it gets shared, the better. It's more joy, more more there's a bigger educational aspect that anyone in the world, not just people in big cities, but anyone can experience the work.
Yeah.
And then when I sell the work, the collector has to sign a contract. The work has to remain public.
Wow, that's interesting. So it can't be archived.
They have an archive, but they have to renew the domain name. They can't just change the website and put a password and say this is private.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
And with the contract, is there also like some sort of certificate that lets them know that they have purchased this?
Yeah.
And also, is there like an edition of one, or each one is unique?
They're unique. Yeah. I
unique
thought
in the sense that it's.
Yeah. I just sell the one because I thought about that for a while, but the work exists in so many copies on everyone's computer.
Yeah.
So then to make an edition of 3 just felt too complicated, and I thought for a while I could do the .com version for private collectors and the .org for museums.
Yeah.
But then already explaining this whole idea is so complicated.
It's nice to standardize it. Yeah.
Just unique.
Yeah.
And then I made the contract not just for selling my work, but I put it online. It's on my website, so anyone, I want to promote this idea that anyone who makes websites can sell it to collectors and can download the text if they want as a reference and change it, or if they just want to use the contract directly.
Ah, that's nice. It's kind of like a very democratic model, to also, it's kind of like, the whole kind of Christian fishing metaphor, teach them how to fish. But then I also like this thing that Brian Eno said recently, because I do participate in this kind of interactive stuff. I really love Brian Eno's music. And then he came up with this program called Skate recently, where you generate your own. And it was great because I'm not a musician, and here I am. I've got like my iPad, and I've got this interface, and I'm on Brian's website. I'm rocking it. I've got the shapes, and it's a very abstract way of composing music. But then I thought, wow, what's interesting is that it all kind of sounds like Brian's work because it's his palette. And then I read more about the interface, and he said, look, I'm not really worried about it because people are just going to be out there making my work. It's not like, do you know what I mean? It's not like I'm going to use that and then I'll cut an album.
But that's an interesting discussion. Is like, who created Impressionism? Was it the artist, or was it the people who made it possible to go outdoor and paint because they made painting too?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's there's a line between creating tools and creating content or art or whatever you call it. So when if the influence of camera makers on video is huge.
Yeah. No, I think that the tool is also a really interesting conversation, because I was thinking an early work that I made where I was thinking of maybe doing like a conceptual drawing on streets with my skateboard, and I wanted to follow traffic lines, and I wanted to record
that video was online.
It is online. I didn't put it online though. Someone else put it online. I'll pull it up. I never want to take stuff offline. But actually that video was only possible, say, like in the late 90s for me to start doing, because of these things that started coming, like palm quarters and handy cams. And there's reference to the idea that they were so small that you could hold them in your hand, which now is such a...
We used to have we had a not 8mm video camera, not an 8mm film camera. I would make little films with my friends when I was 12 or something, but I was quite small. It was quite heavy to have that camera on your shoulder.
Yeah, of course. It's like this. You wouldn't be able to skateboard with something like that.
No.
With this, I didn't have, for the first time, I didn't have to think about the camera. It was just like a very small extension of my body. It wasn't this concern.
Well, now you have Google Glasses, which everybody hates. But they say the coolest aspect of it is the camera.
Yeah.
Because and that's when they say removing friction. You'll see something, and then you'll have to grab your phone and go, camera app. You've already lost 3 seconds. So that bird that you wanted to photograph might have flown away.
Yeah.
And now you just do.
Yeah.
And then when I read the first real commercial application, of course, was in porn, because they do point of view video, and then that's very easy with the glass.
Yeah, no, it's great.
They're always at the forefront of monetizing technology.
It's just weird, because I was thinking, you got to watch who you wink at. Like if you wink at some massive, kind of very aggressive steroid-fueled bodybuilder, that will be the last video you ever make.
Yeah. No, there's been a few incidents in San Francisco. Did you read
I
about
didn't
it?
know about this. No, no.
Because San Francisco is quickly becoming very expensive because of all the software businesses. And now there's this divide between the original population and a lot of people, activists, and the software dudes, who then walk around with Google Glasses, and then it's really easy to identify them, and they punch the glasses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
So
wild.
the glasses became a symbol of the people that raise the rent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. It's like almost like I'm the landlord. I have
Yeah.
this. Yeah, I think that's interesting where it becomes like a class issue, where I like the other side of what you're talking about, the network, where it becomes classless in
Yeah.
a sense, and then it also becomes about the idea that it can happen anywhere. So you've got these, the glasses maybe haven't quite become a part of the mainstream culture or become available on that level because there's still beta versions of what we're about.
Yeah.
One thing we did mention as well is that because you live in New York and I live in London, and we were talking about this idea of the utopian notions of technology. That you can be anywhere. You could be on your laptop or connected to your programmer from, say, a very
From
remote,
Perth.
Perth, or even I could come up with a lot of very remote locations in Australia that make Perth look like a megalopolis, but or anywhere in the world, you know, as long as you've got that network, but you still choose to live in New York. So this is
we were talking about this, that I had imagined a future where cities would become less important and we could move to smaller cities because communication gets better and better. But actually the price of rent in metropolises keeps getting higher, so it means more and more people are still going to the big cities.
Yeah.
So, and I'm the perfect example. I could work remotely, speak to the world through Skype, but I still choose to live in New York. Yeah.
But I guess it's good because in a way it gets down to bodies in space. Like I was thinking that, say, technology like Skype or this idea of video conferencing was novel not so long ago. Now we take it for granted. But there's still maybe an interest in having like a very high exchange rate of bodies in a very compressed space. And also that it's maybe that you get access to museums or people that are interested in what, hey, we're out.
No, we're going to play some audience questions.
That the lure of a big city is still quite strong, despite the capabilities of the technology. So
I think work is work, but then you want to go out and see cool movies in the theater and see music. So,
and record them with your glasses.
You guys have been asking some really great questions, but I was wondering if anyone in our audience had some questions for Sean or Raphael.
So just on being in a different place, you're now in London, you said.
Well, kind of between London and here, I guess.
Does that change your work? And Raphael, coming to Australia, would that change your work?
You should go for it.
Coming to Australia, if it would change my... No, I was here so briefly, I'm just here for 3 days, so... Who knows, maybe something will come up in a dream and I'll make a kangaroo animation, but... I don't... New York has changed my work a little bit, that the pace has become faster and make more work. There's more pressure in a good way, so that I did feel. Yeah.
And likewise for me, I think maybe London is pretty fast-paced, and there's a sense of competitiveness which I like and also I dislike for other reasons. But I still have to recognise that I come here because to make work because I'm addicted to the Australian landscape, and I go a bit crazy if I don't come back here on a regular basis. So I'm kind of maybe caught between the two places.
Which place is exactly between London and
Well, in terms of Qantas flight path, it's Dubai at the moment. We rerouted
so that's really
that
where
from
you are.
Dubai.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Which is actually a great city. Used to be Singapore, Hong Kong, or we had a couple of other, Bangkok, but unfortunately Qantas made that move. And Alan Joyce is what took it. I'm not going to go on record talking about that. Anyway.
Any other questions? got another one?
This guy's stealing the mic. He's out of control.
I saw your work in London, the one on the motorbike.
Oh, okay.
Going down through the desert.
Yeah.
Your work is really slow motion. It's all about slow motion.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the stuff I've seen.
Yeah, I think it's tough because actually a lot of curators ask me about this, and something we didn't talk about, getting away from curators. But and I always tell them that at a certain point in video art, everyone was working with slow motion. It was almost like a kind of cliche for video artists. But actually, I wasn't interested in becoming a kind of slow motion video artist at all. I was more interested in what I was looking at on sports coverage. Yeah, when I would watch anything, cricket, tennis, or whatever.
Slow motion chess.
Slow motion chess, yeah, bring it on, that'd be great. Actually, it's quite weird how my ability now to watch anything in slow motion because it changes it. And I would want to see the slow motion section of that sports telecast, whatever, but the whole thing in slow motion. The slow motion was always the best thing for me because it was so abstracted and graceful and beautiful. You can see the details. And so so I have this interest in slow motion that I can't really kick.
And the cameras are getting slower and slower now. So
well, the frame rate's getting higher and higher, which is great. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a really funny bit on the Chappelle Show about slow motion.
Oh right.
The premise is that everything looks more awesome in slow motion.
Yeah.
So they shoot a scene, then they reshoot it in slow motion, but it's a completely different scene, way more awesome. So.
Yeah, great.
Like he does his laundry as normal, but then he does it in slow motion. All of a sudden, all the girls in the laundromat are like drawn to him. It's so cool.
I love it. But also, I like that when you state what the duration of your work is, and it's really long, that really works out who's hardcore. Like say when Michael Snow did a piece, or whoever, Andy Warhol's Empire State Building project, it's great when you say it's 8 hours long.
Well,
You
then
just go, well, I'm not even going to go in there.
I like when the duration becomes really long. You don't feel the pressure to see it from start to finish.
No.
So you can decide how long you want to be with the piece. And
Yeah.
it becomes more like a thing to stare at instead of something that you have to grasp the whole
Yeah,
thing.
which is similar to your projects as well. I think that
Yeah.
the fact that there is no kind of narrative structure, it's very open.
Yeah, and with me it's important that the duration is infinite. It's not a loop, so it's
Yeah.
programmed so you can,
You can keep dropping that rock in the hole. And
Yeah, but
wobbling the
even
jelly.
the pieces that are not interactive, there's a randomness to them, so it's a bit like a waterfall where
Yeah.
it's moving, but it's always a little different.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Sure. When you say you take things like BMX and skateboarding, and you put them in this different context, which is like more like art stuff, like and you're like in these subcultures yourself anyway, but what's your action when these subcultures see this sort of work? Like, is there like a positive one or a negative? Because it's if you're putting in kind of a gallery context,
Yeah.
what kind of happens?
I think maybe it's different for different works, Like some people I'm working with, they look at the work and they go, it's not really my thing, it's too slow, or it looks like it's too balletic, it's not tough enough, or whatever. And that's fine, it's a valid response or criticism of the work. And then other athletes, they really enjoy seeing something different because they've only ever seen themselves in that particular format of whatever the subculture is doing, whatever that surfing kind of subculture is doing, or the parkour or whatever. So I think it happens in different responses to different works. But the main thing is that they get to see it, both maybe, or if it's possible, in the museum, which is the best, or online, someone shot it on their phone, put it up on the, But it's important for me for the work to go back to the subculture and for the athletes to be able to check it out. So it's good and bad.
In the UK, are you kind of are you looking at different subcultures there, or are you still very much informed by the subcultures that you kind of grew up with here?
It's the same, and also new things that are popping up over there. Yeah, it's a bit of both. Because I guess in a city like London, there's always going to be something that's kind of developing, which is interesting for me. But then also, it's not even about looking at what's happening. It's also about developing things like ideas that I have say around interacting with architecture or public space or artworks or whatever. So it's kind of partly me looking at what other people are doing and inviting them in to collaborate, and also getting ideas and coming up with my own stuff. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, guys. That was a really interesting conversation. You're infinitely tweetable, and I'm really glad that Instagram addiction is not just Instagram addiction. It's an extension of the perception of self. Something
Yeah,
beautifully
moral
poetic.
obligation. Yeah.
That was a really great description, eh? I'm sold on Instagram.
Thanks for having us.
Please thank Raphael Rosenbaum. Sean's actually in an interesting new exhibition, which is at Campbelltown. Do you want to tell everyone about that?
Oh,
It's a program it's actually you're working on it.
yeah, I haven't made the work yet.
Okay.
So I hope it happens. But it is at Campbelltown and it's coming up in pretty soon.
Yeah.
August.
And in August, and so
Yeah.
we'll have some cards for that on your way out, so you can check that out. And Raphael's work, of course, is at newraphael.com. Great, thanks guys.
Thank you.